Hello, this is Madeline with a quick video about mapping outcomes, which I am asking everyone to do this semester. So, mapping outcomes, here we go. What is mapping? Well, it's the connection of the outcomes you have at the course level to the program and institutional outcomes. So here's our outcomes at the course level. English 100, the SWBAT, student will be able to. And here's our 5 outcomes. These are the 5 things we hope they can do at the end of English 100. But our degree also has outcomes. We offer a degree, and if you get it, the idea is you have learned to analyze and respond critically to various texts, and second, demonstrate knowledge of various authors. So those are our program outcomes. And the institution has outcomes too. We have outlined the core competencies which students are supposed to acquire after a sustained course of study at the college. Outcomes 2 through 6, effective communication to ethical responsibility. These are the GE outcomes. That's the general education competencies. And these are really hardest to gauge because we don't have an exit point. They're not associated with a specific degree program, but they are the things that lots of our courses and services will shore up. So we're showing which courses shore up which of these outcomes. So mapping, as I say, connects these outcomes. It shows which program outcomes are supported by which course outcomes, and it shows which institutional outcomes are supported by course outcomes. So why do we do this? There is, first of all, some merit in it because it can help keep your program coherent and current. A lot of degree programs have required or elective courses, usually elective courses, that are not in the discipline area. So if you take an English degree, you have to pick, I think, 6 units from a list that includes business and Chinese and Spanish and communication studies. So those courses are required for our English degree program. But, for all we know, they've revised those course outcomes in their departments, and maybe they no longer fit our program. So this is a way to make sure that the courses required in your program really do still serve a function, help get students to the end point. It is helpful to make sure that you haven't got an outcome for your program that isn't actually supported by any of the courses, which is surprisingly easy to do. Sometimes, for instance, you might have an outcome which refers more to how students will be working, and it isn't reflected in the outcomes for the courses which all refer to what students should be learning. So you might have a program outcome that students can work well in groups, but that never shows up in any of the course outcomes. Now, this may just mean that you only need to reword a course outcome. You might want to drop a program outcome, or maybe you need to overhaul your program. But we're not necessarily talking about a big change, but it's a good thought experiment just to make sure that your program really is still coherent and current. It's also nice, the institutional chart, course to institutional outcome, is nice because it gives us an interdisciplinary picture of how students are doing in core competencies. It's another way for us to look at how students are doing in critical thinking. We can pull up a report which shows how students do in all the outcomes in all the different courses that align with critical thinking, that are supposed to help them sharpen their critical thinking skills. And really more important, it gives us a focal point for faculty collaboration. So if we wanted to focus on one particular competency, we could pull up that report, look at all the outcomes associated with, say, ethical responsibility, and we could bring those faculty together and talk about whatever we wanted to talk about. So it's helpful that way. Okay, so you're going to be doing this mapping. Before I show you examples, let me just give you a few quick tips. The first is keep it simple. Okay, one connection is enough. You don't have to find a link for every one of your course outcomes. As long as for each course in a degree or certificate program, there should be at least one outcome in the course that supports at least one outcome for your program and certificate. They don't all have to, but at least one needs to. So don't feel like you've got to weave everything together. You're just finding the role for each course, the primary role for each course in a degree or certificate program and in the institution. The second is keep it real. Don't strain to find relevance. We've made a point of revising the institutional outcomes because until last year, there were a lot of our work which wasn't really represented. There wasn't anything in it, for instance, about creativity. And so people who taught art or music were trying to connect their course outcomes to, critical thinking. But that was defined mostly in terms of the scientific method and argument analysis. So we've tried to make sure that these institutional outcomes really describe everything we do. So look at them when you do the connection to the institution and really pick the thing that you feel is most what your course or program is supporting. Don't overthink it. If you spend really more than 40 seconds per course, 50 seconds, maybe a minute if you have a lot of outcomes per course, certainly doing your institutional alignments, you're probably thinking too hard. I know that in a lot of disciplines, math and maybe science, nursing perhaps, there's a lot of outcomes. And from a program point of view, I can see that might be a bit more fiddly. But wherever it's possible to not overthink it, just stick to your first response. Finally, make sure you're using your current course and program outcomes. These are in Curricunet. Now we have a website at collegeofsanmateo.edu for student learning outcomes, but alas, the outcomes listed there for degrees and certificates and courses are not all up to date. The institutional outcomes are up to date, not the other ones so much. Curricunet is always up to date. You will probably have the outcomes for your own discipline, so that's probably not such an issue. But if you are looking for outcomes outside your discipline, and you may be if you've got a degree or certificate program, here's how you can pull them out of Curricunet. Here I am at the home page of Curricunet, and I just go over here to the left. You'll see search. I'm going to search for a course, and let me see. Oops, sorry. I'm going to look for active courses because I don't want anything banked or anything like that. Now, I'm going to look for the business class. One of the business classes is an elective for our English AAT degree. So I'm going to check the outcomes for Business 214. I think that's the right one. No, it isn't. It's word processing using Word for Windows. But never mind. You'll still see for the purposes of this demonstration. So I've pulled up a course from somebody else's discipline area, opened up the Word version, and now we will pause while my Word opens up on this rather old laptop. And here we are. So here are the student learning outcomes. You'll notice they're listed A, B, C. I think that's the norm. Some places may number them. Use whatever notation is used. If it's ABC, use ABC. If it's 1, 2, 3, use 1, 2, 3. You'll see what I mean by this in a second. Okay, so this is how you can find outcomes for other courses. So let's get back to our presentation here. Continue to present. Start my presentation. Here we go. All right. So what I'm going to be doing is I will supply anybody who wants one with a mapping form, a Word document, to save you making your own, because who has the time for that nonsense? Here's what it would look like for if you have a degree or certificate, mapping the degree or certificate to the program, to the course outcomes. So here for English, here's our students will be able to, and here's their program outcomes, analyze and respond critically, and here it is, demonstrate knowledge of authors. So I've just started to make the list. English 100, you'll see outcomes 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are numbered. We numbered them. Support this first one. There's an outcome 5. Note, I haven't bothered to put it in either because who cares? Literature 151, Shakespeare class. The second outcome supports this, and the first outcome supports that. Sorry. this is the mapping for the course to institutional outcomes. Again, here's English 100, but here across the top are the institutional outcomes: independent learning, effective communication, and so on. Remember that these are published on the collegeofsanmateo.edu website. Go to the Student Learning Outcomes button, click in the left-hand bar Student Learning Outcomes, and look for institutional outcomes, because there's quite a lot of text for these, the institutional outcomes. There's a description that tells you more about what is meant by these various terms. But again, English 100, outcomes 1, 3, and 4 support effective communication. Outcome 2 supports critical thinking. English 110, outcome 2 supports that. Outcome 1 supports this. Again, there's a third outcome for these two courses, but I haven't aligned it with anything because I don't feel the need. Note, by the way, that on the previous slide for the program outcome, I had in here one of the courses that is not English, but it is in the English program. So the third outcome for Business 401 supports this program outcome. So everything, has a connection. And the number, as I say, you put in, or the mark you put in these columns reflects however the SLOs are written in Curricunet. If it's ABC, then you'd write here A, C, D. Don't feel you have to put in the whole text of the SLO. I can recover it. I can just go back to the Curricunet document that you used, and I will see what those outcomes are. And I will also put them in TrackDat because reasons. They have turned on the functionality, but as I say, TrackDat is not totally up to date. So rather than wait around forever, I figure let's do this now. And then when TrackDat is updated, I'll deal with clicking the box in TrackDat. So that is the story with mapping. If you have any questions, if you need me to come out and just help sit with you and fill out the maps, let me know. That's totally fine. I can email you forms. I'm going to make forms for everyone and just email them to department members. You might want to do this in your department meeting. You might want to just not do it at all. But whatever I can do to help, just let me know. That's my email. And thanks for listening.